Coming up next on Arizona Horizons Journalists Roundtable, the Corporation Commission approves changes to how solar customers can offset energy use. Secretary of State Ken Bennett officially announces his candidacy for governor, and a push for the state to be reimbursed for keeping Grand Canyon National Park open during the federal government shutdown. The Journalists Roundtable is next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Eight, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizons Journalists Roundtable. I'm Ted Simons. Joining me tonight are Mary Jo Pitzel of the Arizona Republic, Jeremy Duda of the Arizona Capital Times, and Hank Stevenson, also from the Arizona Capital Times. Corporation Commission votes to approve net metering changes for solar energy customers. This can be, we have talked about this so much on this program, and yet it always seems like we need to kind of reset what we're talking about. Net metering. Give us a brief definition.
This is basically the money that the Corporation Commission pays back to solar customers for the solar generated power that those customers feed into the grid. If they generate excess electricity during the day, if they don't use it in their household, it goes into the grid. So the policy has been to pay those consumers for their contribution. And
the controversy here, or the issue here, is how much they get for that excess energy.
Correct, and APS's argument that wait a minute, this by us paying them, that masks any the costs that we, the utility, incur in providing access to the grid to these customers. In fact, APS thinks we should charge them something for the privilege of them tapping into our grid.
Interesting. Okay, so we've got APS and we've got consumers there, the solar industry, everyone and their brother there at the Corporation Commission, not yelling and shouting, but coming pretty doggone close. What happened?
Well, the Corporation Commission, they gave APS a little bit of what they wanted, but far less than they'd been asking for. They had been asking for a very massive cut in these rates, about half, which would average out to about $75 for a solar customer. They ended up getting was about $5 a month from these folks. And going in, this was a two-day hearing on Tuesday or Wednesday and Thursday, and going in, the solar folks and APS, no one had budged. APS said, we need this. The solar people said, we need absolutely no change. And the solar people got a little bit of a change, but they feel like this is enough to for this industry to still be profitable. And that was the whole problem for them, is if you decrease these rates that APS is to pay back to the solar customers, it's no longer profitable for people to buy or rent these very expensive systems. They say the solar system will go under, and they walked out of this declaring victory.
And yet APS saying, we've got to get more money from these folks or the system just can't stand. I mean, it's an equation that just won't work.
Yeah, both sides kind of walked out of it calling this a victory to some degree. I think APS feels it's a victory because they made small increments, and eventually, they're going to get further and further along with their goal of jacking up these rates, or I guess it's lowering these rates of what they're paying out to customers.
Yeah, I think the argument is that as solar users grow, if indeed that market share grows, that will make the problem more apparent. That's part of APS's argument. Also, there will be a rate case that will be opened up sometime down the road, which will sort of open up this whole issue about what APS charges all of its customers.
Sure, and what APS really got was, even though the monetary gains were fairly small, what they really got was an acknowledgement that yes, these solar customers are pushing some of these infrastructure costs off to other customers, which probably will help them in a few years when they go back for their rate case. Now, whether or not it was worth the $3.7 million they spent on this massive PR campaign, the commercials you saw about the guy stealing the sprinkles from the ice cream truck, whether it was worth that, remains to be seen.
70 cents per kilowatt per month, that fee will be added now, and not now, we're talking the start of the first of the year for new customers. If you got it now, it's grandfathered in or till the end of the year. It just seems to me, Hank, like, yes, we've got the door open, we're moving in that direction, but there still doesn't seem to be much certainty for APS. not much certainty for the solar industry.
No, this definitely wasn't decided. I mean, there was a little stopgap measure that kind of left everyone feeling somewhat happy, not terribly thrilled about it. But this is going to be something that's going to need to be revisited in the future, probably multiple times. I mean, this is obviously a first small step in what will probably play out over the next couple of years.
And as far as an endgame, Mary Jo, I mean, again, something's got to give here, because if if you have solar and I don't, and you're selling back to the grid and APS needs more money, I'm the one paying for it because I don't have solar. APS says that just ain't going to cut it.
Right, and I think that's where, with time and with the growth of the market and the probably a pending rate case, that's where this will all come up again. And keep in mind, this is somewhat of a bellwether for other states as well, as they grapple with policies on what should we do about net metering, and how do we handle people who are coming onto the electricity grid but using alternative forms of energy like wind or solar.
The vote was 3-2, close vote. Who voted yay? Who voted nay for the extra fees?
No, the yes votes were Bob Stump, the chairman of the commission, Robert Burns, and Susan Bitter-Smith. No votes were Gary Pierce and Brenda Burns.
And we should say the no votes were no because they thought APS should have gotten more.
Yeah, Brenda Burns, she felt like APS basically should have gotten back what the Corporation Commission staff had determined what that cost shift was. You know, the staffers felt like APS wasn't losing as much money as they claimed, but it was probably about $20 a month per one of these customers. So she basically said, let's increase this to give them back $20 a month. Pierce wanted to go a lot further, a lot closer to what APS themselves had said they were losing, and so they were both on the no vote.
Some controversy regarding Gary Pierce and this case. Some folks noting that their family member here running for office, APS maybe supporting the family member, that all those sorts of allegations are out there. A relationship, I think was the word used, with APS. What's going on here?
Yeah, there's been a couple of people making these allegations. One of them is Will Carden, who's running against Justin Pierce, Gary Pierce's son, for the Secretary of State. The other one is a former Corporation Commissioner, Sandra Kennedy, who is running again in 2014. And basically it boils down to how close is Gary Pierce with APS, and is he using that influence to maybe funnel some money into his son's campaign. And you know, I don't think there's been any real hard evidence of it, but it's been one of those fun back and forths that us in the media like to cover. There were a couple of dueling press releases about it that were a lot of fun a couple of weeks ago. And basically, I guess Justin Pierce now is saying, well, then fine, I'll just run on clean elections money. So you can't make these kind of allegations. But still, APS or anyone else that is regulated by the Corporation Commission could come in and fund his campaign through independent expenditure committee. So it doesn't really settle things, if there is anything to settle.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
what's settling out there?
No, it doesn't. I mean, this was an attempt to sort of spotlight Gary Pierce by making allegations about him trying to use his influence to favor his son in his race. And people will read Gary Pierce's no vote as their biases probably guide them. Commissioner Pierce made a long speech yesterday while they were voting to making reference to this sort of smear campaign, saying it's regrettable that it happens. He understands why these things happen, but it shouldn't, and he denies that he's doing anything to aid and abet his son's campaign or any outside expenditure that might benefit Justin Pierce's Secretary of State bid.
A lot of sound and fury here. What do you got?
It's hard to say. The millions of dollars that APS spent on this PR campaign and net metering is only going to fuel these accusations they're going to fund these independent expenditures for Justin Pierce. Gary Pierce, I believe, is one of the people who helped to kill off this deregulation push that APS was really against. And plus, we've seen some kind of cozy relationships between representatives of APS and Justin Pierce's campaign. As before he switched to clean elections money, he had a big fundraiser at the Phoenix Country Club, and the person who organized that was Jessica Pacheco, the APS's main lobbyist. And Pierce's campaign was saying, well, we're not really sure what, we didn't have anything to do with this. We didn't organize it. We didn't ask for it. Then APS says, well, we just did it at their request. So,
but it's not like APS is the law firm that works with APS is somehow going to Michelle Reagan, for example, and saying you shouldn't be running for Secretary of State.
Well, depends on who you ask. The third Republican in that race, along with Pierce and Carden, Michelle Reagan, former Senator John Kyle, who now works for a law firm that has APS as a client. Him and Susan Bitter-Smith, one of the corporation commissioners, went to Reagan and said, maybe you should get out of this Secretary of State's race. You'd be good at Corporation Commission. Why don't you run for that instead?
Well, we will keep an eye on that particular situation. Another situation, far more sober here, regarding Yarnell Hill. We've got our first lawsuit. Talk to us about this regarding a fallen firefighter.
Yeah, today the mother of Grant McKee, who was one of the 19 Granite Mountain hotshots who died in June, filed a notice of claim, which is a precursor to a lawsuit. She named the state of Arizona, Yavapai County, and Prescott, and said that they are all culpable in the death of her son, who died a horrible, horrific death, citing a variety of reasons, but basically improper guidance while they were fighting the fire, not instructing them to move out of a safe area. That big unanswered question we have, these guys were in a safe area, why did they move out of the black and towards ostensibly this ranch house? The investigative reports that we don't know. In her notice of claim, she says that this was a ridiculous order, but she doesn't say who sent that order. So it's the first, I don't know if there will be other notices of claim, but she is seeking $12 million from each of those entities, or will settle for $12 million if they settle it without going to court.
And it seemed as though there's a special frustration with the investigation, because I think she said something along the lines that it was almost useless, it was a whitewash, and it basically was done to avoid blaming anyone. Is that, I mean, that investigation seems to have satisfied absolutely no one.
Correct. Well, I think the investigation, they were signaling before it came out that this thing isn't going to point. We're not going to assess blame. That's not our job. We changed procedures after, I forget, some report that came out after another disastrous wildfire years ago, so that we do not assess blame, because people will use that report to then go and sue, and that's not our intent. So that report didn't really satisfy anybody.
All right, that woman lives in California, and her son, her 21-year-old son, was her only child, and that was that brought up as well. So that's just a horrible situation. Again, we'll see if there's any more of these that will occur. Ken Bennett. Surprise! He wants to be governor.
Yeah, but this would have surprised anyone in Arizona, 6-8 years ago, before we really started broadcasting those intentions. Secretary of State Bennett was elected to a full term in 2010, and about 4 months after he was sworn in for that 4-year term in January of 2011, he filed an exploratory committee for governor. That exploratory committee has been open for about 2.5 years. He's been campaigning fairly actively for a while now, and on Tuesday he finally pulled the trigger and said, I'm running for governor.
And he will be running in a crowded field. We're expecting Doug Ducey, Christine Jones, Andrew Thomas, and Al Melvin, who knows, maybe Scott Smith as well. Bennett's chances, what are they saying out there?
I mean, he's definitely in the top tier of candidates. I think everyone's pointing to the main issue he's going to have is he's a clean elections candidate and won't be able to raise the significant amount of money that some of his other competitors might be able to. I mean, some of those things have been kind of evened out by independent expenditure committees, which can come to candidates' aides. But again, those kind of end up washing each other out when you've got two independent expenditures for two different candidates spending, a lot of times about the same amount of money. So it still does come down to a lot of times how much you can raise.
Well, yeah, I mean, Secretary Bennett has, some name ID. I mean, he's won statewide election. Before that, he served in the state Senate representing the Prescott North Central Arizona area. And it looks from his announcement that he's running a lot on a platform of veterans. And in fact, his office is working on a veterans World War II memorial, which will debut next month at the Capitol. And I think he's cornered the foreign honorary consul market, because he had not one, not two, but 3 honorary consuls from foreign countries at his announcement, representatives of El Salvador, Estonia, and Poland. And what struck me is that they all had wonderful things to say about Ken Bennett, particularly his foreign language skills, not in Estonian, Polish, or Spanish, but in Japanese. So there you go.
Well, all right, that's interesting. Any big GOP names on the Ken Bennett team yet? Are we seeing folks signing up and ready to go?
Not that I've seen so far. It's still pretty early. I think Doug Ducey is probably the only one really rounding up those names right now, but the campaign's still very early. A lot of people really haven't picked their side yet. Bennett's been around the state capitol for a long time. He's made a lot of friends. He's a very likable guy. So I'm sure he'll get some of that support. Like Hank was saying, I think it's probably going to come down to the money and the name ID. He'll have less money, but he starts off with higher name ID than most of his opponents here.
And am I the only one? But Ducey's formally in the race. So is Christine Jones. But I don't recall any big events, announcements such as we saw this week with Ken Bennett. Are we going all cyber on candidate announcements?
And that's why you kind of wonder where's the parade starting, because you don't know. The parade's already passed you by and you don't even know it happened yet.
Yeah.
Regarding Bennett, though, and policy, he is very big in replacing the income tax with this broad-based, low, all-encompassing, every transaction sales tax. I mean, believe me, he's big on this, and he will talk to you about it, and I'm guessing he's going to talk about it a lot on the camp. Is that something that would help a candidate in Arizona, or is that something that's so far out there that maybe not?
I'm not sure how that plays with the public, and he hasn't really explained how exactly he's going to accomplish this yet. So, I mean, the details just aren't there to really lay out the numbers and ask people, what do you think of this? Would you rather pay more every time you go to buy anything and keep your money off of your income tax?
Yeah, I think the devil will be in the details on this, which you really didn't have much of in the way on Tuesday. But I think the problem he's going to run into is he says, we can eliminate the income tax, and of course, who wouldn't like that? Who wouldn't like paying no income tax? But he says we can replace it not even by increasing the sales tax rate, maybe by even lowering it, but broadening it. The problem is that the income tax brings in about $4 billion a year to the state. I think that's what is projected for this current fiscal year. The sales tax already brings in about $4 billion as well. I'm not sure, without taxing food, which he said he won't do, I'm not sure how you expand that to bring $4 billion in.
The Democrats have been down this path for years, talking about lowering the rate, broadening the base. But we can't touch food. We probably shouldn't touch medical expenses, and they can't find a way to make that work and come out positive. The Democrats have been able to identify a lot of areas where you could bring in more revenue, but the Democrats' aim was never to get rid of the income tax. They just wanted to they wanted to bring in more revenue for the state by broadening the base and lowering the rate, and they can't sell that. Now Bennett's sounding a bit like he's taking a page from their book.
And last question regarding Ken Bennett's candidacy. Again, we've got to start with the Republican primary because that's the side that he will start with. Had some birther issues going on there. There were some family issues in the past regarding a son, I think, at a camp or something along the. Do those things last? Do they make a difference? Impact on a race like this?
It's hard to say. The birther thing was definitely, that was much more recent. That was kind of embarrassing, and I think that surprised most of the people who know Ken Bennett, that he kind of embarked down that path. He basically said he was responding to requests from people who were emailing his office saying, hey, you need to look into Obama's birth certificate. He did it, it got out, he defended himself and kind of doubled down on it, and finally came back and said, okay, well, I'm convinced he was born in America, he's on the ballot, so the issue is settled.
Is that, what does that do in the primary? What does it do in a general?
Yeah, I think that, the people who support him will probably let that slide because he's got a long history of being a pretty reasonable guy. I don't see it hurting him a lot in the primary. Probably will come back to bite him in the general if he makes it that far.
All right, we had some TV ads attacking Tom Horn on the campaign finance issue, which it's hard for him to shake that, and he's still involved with it as far as the case is concerned. Who is the Arizona Public Integrity Alliance?
It's 3 or 4 guys who appear to have access to a lot of money. They've been playing in a lot of races and issues, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of connecting threads. Last year in the Republican primary for House of Representatives, they backed Kirk Adams and attacked Matt Salmon. They helped out former state senator Jerry Lewis in his general election. They campaigned against Lester Pierce, Board of Supervisors. More recently this year, they actually sued the Maricopa County Special Health Care District over a contract they gave for mental health services. And now they are running ads against Tom Horn saying you need to return this $400,000 that the Yavapai County attorney says you illegally contributed to your campaign in 2010.
A watchdog group goes this far with television commercials?
And it's not a campaign ad. That's one of the main points here. They're never going to have to disclose where this money came from because they don't say the words don't vote for or don't re-elect, those kind of key words that you have to say to be considered campaigning. So we may never really know how this whole thing came together.
And the Attorney General's office is, I think they're already calling this group of cowards in hiding and this sort of thing. Is this just, we're just going to see more and more of this kind of stuff, aren't we?
Yeah, I believe so. I think, we saw that with the APS rate case. We saw it with the campaigns last year for the open primary and the penny sales tax extension. It's, all sort of this dark money things, so-called, because you can't trace back where the money comes from, and there's no requirement to disclose. Now, that could be taken care of perhaps with some legislation, but I don't know if we'll see Attorney General Horn down at the legislature championing that kind of disclosure.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because that kind of disclosure might have helped him in this particular case, but you just never know. Arizona's congressional delegation finally making a push here to get reimbursement for keeping the Grand Canyon open. What's happening?
Well, they sent an angry letter to the National Park Service saying Arizona spent about $460-something thousand to keep the park open during the shutdown. We want you to give it back. Now the Park Service says, well, gee, we don't really actually have the authority to do this. You guys have the authority to do this because you're the ones who were in Congress. So based on the fact that the Park Service says they don't even have the authority to do it, these folks might have to hunker down and actually vote on it.
Yeah, there is a bill that Representative Gosar, I think, signed on to that would reimburse not only Arizona but other states that ponied up money during the shutdown to keep national parks in their areas opened up. But yeah, the legislature, Congress appropriates. That's their job.
Right. And the entire congressional delegation signed on, except for
Ed Pastor and Raul Grijalva from down in southern Arizona. And it's kind of strange that they wouldn't be amenable to this idea. I mean, the federal government pay us back for that, and I'm not really sure what that's about.
Do we know
it's
why?
strange.
I'm not sure.
We don't know why, but there's an argument there's a couple arguments. One, if you really want to start whittling away at the federal deficit, here's a start. It's a little bit of savings,
Yeah.
but most likely it's more a belief that you shouldn't have given any ground on the shutdown. The whole point of shutting down the government was shut down, and even though it was a limited shutdown, shut everything down under that limited umbrella, and don't start nibbling away at the edges, which is what started to happen as the shutdown dragged on. Oh, we'll let this happen, and we'll let this happen, and I think Grijalva and Pastor are in that camp that says you can't. You got to hold firm so that
one or the other.
So we get the vote on opening up the whole government.
Before we go, we learned today Ben Miranda died at the age of 64, former state lawmaker in the House for about 8 years or so, married to current Representative Catherine Miranda. Legacy of Ben Miranda. Who was Ben Miranda?
Ben Miranda was a maverick within the Democratic caucus at the legislature, somewhat his own man, often at odds with his own leadership, but he was steadfast in his defense of the rights for the underprivileged. He came from an underprivileged background, got himself through law school, and saw himself as fighting for the little man.
He came up in like the 80s and 90s working with Cesar Chavez's movement with United Farm Workers. More recently, one of his former colleagues was telling me today that every Saturday at his law firm, he would hold basically open hours to do pro bono work for people who couldn't afford legal services. So I think a lot of that stuff will probably be his legacy.
And he was even rumored to be running for the House again. I mean, and I talked to him about this a couple of weeks ago, and I talked to his wife about it, and they both said no. No truth to that rumor, but it was one of those things that was tough to stomp out, and it just kind of goes to show that he was still around, he was still active, he was still a player, and was taken too soon.
And again, as far as his history in the House, at a time when would the Democrats have much power when Ben Miranda was in the House?
No, in fact, their caucus is stronger today than
Yes.
it was, during the 8 years that he served.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, sad news there. We should mention, we just got the news today. We really don't know what happened here.
Correct, and I think everybody was waiting for a statement from his wife, Representative Catherine Miranda, who happened to be in Orlando at a legislative conference when the news came. So that's a long, sad flight
Yeah,
back.
no kidding. All right, well, we will leave it at that. Thank you so much for joining us on the Journalist Roundtable. Monday on Arizona Horizon, the director of the Residential Utility Consumer Office will discuss the new net metering changes, and we'll learn how DPS plans to crack down on distracted driving. Those stories Monday on Arizona Horizon. Tuesday, Phoenix Mayor Greg Stanton makes his monthly appearance to discuss city issues. Wednesday, physicist Lawrence Krauss will have the latest in science news, including an update on dark matter. Thursday, the status of winter air quality in Maricopa County will be discussed. And Friday, it's another edition of the Journalists Roundtable. That is it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great weekend.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.